Greetings, dear Bhagavatam lovers. We're at the end of Dhruva's story. So let's try to get it all in today. So we'll jump right in. After many years thus engaged in the first three facets of life, he gave the throne to his son. What are the first three facets of life? Do you know what he's talking about? The first three facets of life, the first one is just to have pleasure. That's called kama. That's the first facet. That's the basic facet people want. Basically, everything is an attempt to enjoy, because that's what we are. We're consciousness. So we want to have enjoyable experiences because we're the experiencer. That's the first facet. The second facet is security. To ensure the pleasure will continue. That's the second facet. The third facet is morality, to ensure that chaos and competition doesn't interfere with the pleasure. So those are the first three facets. The fourth facet is moksha, which is freedom. So after many years engaged in the first three facets of life, thus engaged. So that means the way that was described at the end of the session yesterday, by doing good deeds for people, by giving a lot of charity, by giving your energy to people. That's how you actually pursue the three facets of life. Then he, after like close to 36,000 years, or maybe 36,000 years like that, then he decided, all right, my tenure is done. He gave the throne to his son, Kalpa or Vikalpa, or one of those. His senses were now completely under his control by this time. His senses were completely under his control, and his mind was extremely broad. So it's not that by pursuing the three facets of life you don't make spiritual progress. Only by directly pursuing moksha you make spiritual progress. The first three facets of life strengthen you, enable you, develop the character and the qualities in you that you need to be able to pursue the fourth. He realized that this whole world is a product of Maya, manifest according to one's own ignorance. So Maya means like an illusion. Now an illusion means Maya. It's not what you think it is. So Maya is a power that makes you not see something for what it is, but to see it as something else. And Dhruva realized that the whole world is a product of Maya, of seeing something not the way it really is. But instead seeing it as how you think it is. That's what Dhruva realized. He realized that the whole world is a product of Maya, manifest according to one's own ignorance. So what he realized is the world that I'm perceiving is actually just a product of my ignorance. It seems this way because of my ignorance. It's not really that, Maya. You understand that? It's a very important point, because when people hear Maya or illusion, they have some weird ideas about what it means. And they think that it means that the world doesn't exist. If I tell you the world is just an illusion, then you probably think, then I guess it doesn't really exist. It exists. You exist, the world exists, everything exists. But it's not what we think it is. It's different than what we think it is. We perceive the reality through our ignorance. Therefore, we don't perceive it as it is. We perceive it as something else. That's what Maya means. Maya means not this. It doesn't mean nothing. It means not this. Not what you think it is. Okay? So he realized that the whole world is a product of Maya, manifest according to one's own ignorance. It's like a dream of a floating city. Interesting analogy. It's like a dream of a floating city. Knowing that time would destroy him, along with his wives, children, friends, power, wealth, his beautiful home and gardens, and even the entire earth bounded by the seas, he left it all seeking something greater. So what he realized also is that everything in the reality that he's perceiving is changing. Probably because it's a product of his ignorant perception, and his ignorance keeps changing. Knowing that, he decided, well, I'm not going to try to hang on to these things forever. These things are destined to go away, so I'm not going to pretend that they're not going to go away. Let me seek something greater. I'm okay to give up these things because I'm going to give them up anyway. They are, by their very nature, things which go away. So he went to Badarikashram, an interesting choice of place. Dhruva has very interesting places that he has done his sadhanas. His first place was in Vrindavan. It's called Madhuvan, in the Madhuvan, and not literally in Vrindavan, but in Vraja area, which Vrindavan is one of the forests. He was in Madhuvan, very local to Vrindavan. Then his second place is Badarikashram. Badarikashram is where Vyasa does his editing on the Vedas. It's Vyasa's ashram. So, in the shelter of Badarikashram, he bathed in auspicious water to purify his body. So he went to Badarikashram, bathed in the river there, which is Ganges. Then he sat firmly, controlled his breath, and withdrew his mind from external perceptions. Boom. Asana, pranayam, pratyahara. It's always a part of every practice. Asana, pranayam, pratyahara. You have to sit right, you have to breathe right, and then you have to withdraw your senses from other things. Withdraw your thoughts and contemplations from other things. Sit right means sitting firmly, not uncomfortably, but not lazily. Breathing means controlling your breathing deliberately. And then that allows your mind to become quiet, and then it can become pratyahara, it can become withdrawn from things and focused on what you want. He concentrated upon the image of the all-attractive. So that's his dharana. After pratyahara, you have dharana. So that means your mind is withdrawn from the other things, and now you focus it or hold it, dharana, upon the desired thing. So he focused his dharana on the rupa, the image of Bhagavan. As this meditation became uninterrupted, that's what comes after dharana, dhyana, and then samadhi. Dhyana means uninterrupted contemplation. So as this meditation became uninterrupted, he achieved samadhi. As for all attractive, as his heart melted again and again, overwhelmed with devotion for all attractive Hari, an endless river of blissful tears constantly flowed, and all the hairs on his skin stood on end. He could no longer think of himself, for he had attained the epitome of liberation. Contemplate that, digest that. He could no longer think of himself, for he attained the epitome of liberation. Does he cease to exist? No. But he ceases to be the central figure in his own narrative. He no longer thinks of himself. He saw an amazing craft descend from space, illuminating the 10 directions like the full moon. So here comes a UFO. Japanese people call them UFOs. So he sees some amazing kind of craft come out of the sky. And it looks like the moon, full moon. In it were 2 illustrious divinities with 4 arms. 2 illustrious divinities with 4 arms, shama black complexions, adolescent age, and red-tinged lotus petal eyes. They were dressed beautifully. Why do they look just like Vishnu? That's actually part of the moksha. We are just like Vishnu, so of course we'll look just like Vishnu. They were dressed beautifully with graceful earrings, bracelets, necklaces, and crowns, and they held maces. He knew that they were servants of the subject of song, Vishnu. He stood to greet them, but became confused and couldn't remember what he should do. He simply uttered the names of Madhudvisha. It's one of the names for Vishnu. Means who's literally means enemy of Madhu. So you can interpret Madhudvisha in many ways. Enemy of Madhu. Madhu, there's a particular enemy in some dramatic story named Madhu. Some foe. But Madhu primarily means sweetness or honey. And Madhudvisha means the defeater of sweetness. So it means sweeter than sweet. While he stood there, with his heart enwrapped in Krishna's feet, hands folded and neck bowed in respect, Vishnu's two associates, Sunanda and Nanda, went to him and spoke to him with smiles. Behold, behold, king, they said. The best of fortunes unto you. Please listen closely to what we will say. You made our divine God very happy by your self-discipline when you were 5 years old. We are two companions of he who holds the Sharanga bow, and who is the very substance of all existence. We are here now to bring you into his all-attractive abode. This abode of Vishnu is so very difficult to attain, but you have attained it. Even the gods cannot attain it. They simply look up to it. Remember, we were talking all the nakshatra stuff about the point at which the nakshatras revolve around being the entry point into Shweta Dvipa or Vaikuntha, Vishnu's abode. And it's Abhijit associates to that point. And that's Brahma's abode. So the guys are telling him, you're attaining this point that the gods look up to. Come now to that place, which the moon, sun, and other planets and constellations of stars circumambulate clockwise. Dear, your forefathers never attained this place, nor has anyone else. Come now to that supreme abode of Vishnu, which the entire universe respects. Wow, so there, like literally kind of like a UFO came down from Vishnu's planet, which of course is not a planet, but and is like inviting Dhruva to come up, we'll take you up there. So how's Dhruva going to react? How would you react? And he has even forgotten himself at this point. It's been said, right? So he's like totally enwrapped in a spiritual, what would you call it? Trance state. I wonder how he's going to react. He doesn't move. He doesn't get on the craft. Bobo. He does. Bobo, you spell it like this. Bobo. He doesn't move. So the two, Sunanda and Nanda, they're trying to figure out why this guy's not coming. So they try to encourage him. So they try to encourage him. So they say, the most glorious himself has sent this amazing craft to you. You are worthy to board it with your own body, the vitality of which will never wane. So they imagine that Dhruva was feeling unworthy or impossible. This is impossible, or how can I go there? And so they tried to encourage him. No, Vishnu himself sent us to you to take you as you are on this plane. Don't hesitate. Now, what do you think he does? So they were right, actually. That's what was on his mind first. So after he heard the honey-like words of carefree Vishnu's chief ambassadors, the beloved devotee of the great adventurer prepared to depart. So what did he do? He took a bath. And then he decorated himself by applying tilak and so on. So he's going to go see Vishnu, so he's not going to go looking all disheveled. That's an interesting thing. Then he paid his respects to the scholars who had assembled and gratefully accepted their blessings. And then he respectfully circumambulated that wondrous vessel and paid respects to Vishnu's two associates. His body shone like brilliant gold, for it had become pure spiritual consciousness. He then felt ready to accept entry into that craft. Oh, this is amazing. Wow, I forgot this part. Then Uttanapad's son saw the ender, death, come forward and act as a stairway. So there's the craft, and here's Dhruva. Dhruva's walking around the craft. And then death comes and becomes the stairway from Dhruva to the craft. Giving the touch of his feet to death's head, Dhruva boarded that amazing palatial craft. All sorts of drums resounded as he boarded, like mridanga, dundubi, and panava. As the foremost celestial singers sang and showered a rain of flowers. But as he was about to ascend into the heavens, he remembered something. He has a final hesitation. What do you think it is that he remembers? Let me see what you guys say. Just as he's about to leave for the Dhruva point, for Dhruvakshiti, beyond Abhijit Nakshatra, he stops because he remembered something. What do you remember? He forgot his car keys. He left his sunglasses somewhere. Wow, Anil, how did you know this? Samantha, you knew this also. He remembered his mother. But as he was about to ascend into the heavens, he remembered his mother, Suniti. I will not go to this unreachable place beyond the three worlds, he thought. I will go to my poor mother. Knowing what he was thinking, the two great divinities pointed out a goddess going in another craft in front of them. It was his mother. So this is really cool. So Dhruva was like, I don't really want to go there. I want to go see my mom. My mother is the whole reason why I'm here right now. If it wasn't for her, none of this stuff would have happened. I would have never became this person that I am now. Let me go to her. She's the source of this fortune. Let me go to her and make sure I can keep that fortune. But then they pointed ahead. They said, look. And then he saw some amazingly beautiful goddess on a craft. And he understood that's her. And she was in front of him. Took her first. As his craft ascended on its path through the heavenly bodies, various gods. Wow, this is so interesting. As his craft ascended on its path through the heavenly bodies, various gods from each came forward to praise him. So as he's ascending through the planes of the cosmos, the chief inhabitants of each plane come to greet him and say something to him. He was covered in the flowers they showered upon him. In this divine vehicle, he surpassed the boundaries of the three worlds. So he goes past Bhu, Bhuva, Swa, he passes the nakshatras. And then he arrives in the, and he even surpasses the realms of the sages. That's where the Big Dipper, the high Arctic stars are. He then arrived at the abode of Vishnu, the Dhruva, the North Pole. Not the North Pole of the Earth, but the North Pole of the sky. And he arrived at the abode of Vishnu, the permanent destination. It illuminated itself by its own brilliance. That's also the meaning of that word that we were talking about a couple of days ago, Brajishna. It illuminated itself by its own brilliance. Any illumination in the three worlds is not but a semblance of its effulgence. It cannot be reached by people who have no affection. It is attained by those who constantly give themselves to the welfare of others. Peaceful, egalitarian, pure people who bring happiness to all creatures can easily go to this abode of Achyutya, for Achyutya loves them as his own friends. Thus, by his dedication to Krishna, Uttanapad's son Dhruva became greater and more pure than even the crown jewel of the three worlds. All the celestial lights ceaselessly revolve around him with deep, unyielding force, like a team of bulls around the mill rod. Now, there's a little bit more. We're going to get a concluding statement now from Narada. Narada, who is Dhruva's guru? He's got two gurus, two primary gurus. So we should stop thinking in singular terms about a guru. Everybody thinks about guru. Who's your guru? Oh, so and so. Oh, okay, then you're in this camp and that and not blah blah blah. It's so stupid and sectarian the way people think of gurus. If we realize things honestly, we have many, many gurus. So primarily Dhruva has two. I mean, even Swayambhuva Manu is an important one. But primarily there's two. There's this mother, Suniti, and then there's, you could even say Suruchi, but really, honestly, it's his mother, Suniti. And then there's Narada. Narada was what we would call the Abhideya guru, and his mother is what we would call the Sambandha guru. The mother is the one who said, this is what you should try to achieve. And then Narada is the one who taught him the method to achieve it. So he's going to have now his Abhideya guru, Narada, is going to say some words about Dhruva. That's interesting. And then Maitreya is going to say some words to Vidura about the story. Yeah, of course, Marie. All right, so let me finish it up, and then we'll come back and look at all the chats and all that. That'll probably be my new system. Okay, so the words from Narada. Seeing his greatness, the blessed sage Narada began to pluck the strings of his instrument and sing his praises in the ceremony held by the Prachetas. Now, this is kind of like a segue into the next story that this fourth part of Bhagavatam is going to tell, which, if my memory serves right, it segues into the Prachetas. I think maybe Vidura is going to say, what is this ceremony that Narada was at when this happened? So Narada sees it or hears about it or wherever, sees that Dhruva's gone finally to the Dhruvaloka, and he starts to sing. That's amazing. Now you know that Dhruva has really achieved something amazing, because Narada sings about Vishnu. If he's going to sing about somebody else besides Vishnu, then that person must be equal to Vishnu. So Narada would sing about Vishnu's bhaktas as well. But it's an extreme honor to be sung about by Narada. So what Narada said was, Vedic philosophers cannot comprehend even the sadhana that Suniti's son performed. What to speak of attaining the goal he attained by the power of his self-discipline. So his point is, what this guy did in his practice, people can't even do his practice. They can't even comprehend how he did his practice. How do you hold your breath? How many months? Was it like for a month or at a time or something? I forget the exact detail. After having not eaten for like 5 months, while standing on one foot and focusing your mind completely inward, how do you do that? You can't even comprehend his practice. That's what Narada said. People can't even comprehend his practice, what to speak of his perfection, the goal that he got from the practice. They can't even comprehend how he did his practice, so how is there any chance that anybody could achieve the goal that he achieved? Yet, he was merely royalty. This is a very interesting way of speaking. Merely royalty. Because in this context, people are brahmanas, which is superior to kshatriyas, superior to royalty. People are philosophers, which is superior to kings. So Dhruva is described as being merely a king, meaning that he's not particularly qualified to do brahmana type of things, intellectual type of things, philosophical type of things, spiritual type of things. He's qualified to do warrior kind of things, administrative kind of things, social kind of things, worldly things. He's a kshatriya. But he's not a brahmana. But he did practice that even the greatest brahmanas and philosophers can't even comprehend how he could do that. Vedic philosophers cannot comprehend even the sadhana that Suniti's son performed, what to speak of attaining the goal he attained by the power of his self-discipline. He was merely royalty, not a great philosopher with any special advantage. When he was 5 years old, his father's wife broke and charred his heart with terrible words. He went into the forests, following my instructions, and developed the beautiful qualities of devotion that conquered the heart of the unconquerable master. Any earthling who considers himself a warrior, like Dhruva, might strive for many, many years to attain what Dhruva attained, but Dhruva attained it quite quickly when he was just 5 or 6 years old. By Vishnu's mercy, he attained Vishnu's abode. So that's Narada speaking out about the greatness of this person, Dhruva. Now concluding words from Maitreya. Maitreya now informs Vidura. Now I have answered your questions about Dhruva. And this whole story is being told by Maitreya to Vidura because Vidura asked some questions about it. So Maitreya says, okay, now the story is done. I answered your questions about Dhruva, whose superlative fame and character is always contemplated by good people. Regularly and attentively hearing this tale of the deeds of Achyuta's beloved will grant all the greatest forms of auspiciousness, wealth, fame, health, and piety. If you want wealth, fame, health, and piety, piety means proper behavior, good behavior, then like moral behavior, then just listen to the stories of Dhruva regularly, especially the part where Swayambhuva Manu corrects Dhruva. It will elevate one to paradise, and it will elevate even those in paradise to Dhruva's own position in the eternal realm. It purifies all evil inclinations and allows devotion for the all-attractive to manifest, which shall destroy all suffering. If you want to develop excellent character and qualities, you should hear this tale. If you want power and respect, this tale will make you truly powerful and respectable. In the morning and evening, the literate should attentively narrate this tale of the purifying glories of Dhruva's exalted deeds. The literate can narrate. The people who can read, they can read. So the people who can read should read this to the people who can't read. In the morning and evening, the literate should attentively narrate this tale of the purifying glories of Dhruva's exalted deeds. This is particularly fruitful when done on the days of the full moon, dark moon, 12th phase, or any day when the moon phase is skipped or elongated, or when the moon is in the Shravana constellation, or when the month changes, or even on any Sunday. So here's your muhurtas for doing Dhruva Katha. The proper astrological days and so forth for Dhruva Katha, most fruitfully done, is interesting. Full moon, practically everything is good on a full moon, but also dark moon. And on the Dvadashi, that's the day after an Akadashi. So it's on the 12th phase of the moon. Then also on the days which are typically inauspicious for material things, which is the Kshayatiti and the Vyatipat. Kshaya Titi is when you lose a titi. Titi is a day on a lunar calendar. Each day is equivalent to a phase of a moon, but sometimes you lose a day. I think it's because it's the way that it interacts with the sunrise. So because the spans of the phases are not exactly identical to the span of a sunrise to sunset. So you can occasionally get one sunrise right at the end of one nakshatra or one phase, and then the next one will be right at the beginning of the next one after the next. So you can lose a day, and typically those are inauspicious days, but they're auspicious days for sadhanas, for spiritual practices. So if you do Dhruva Katha on those type of days, or whenever the moon is in Shravana, which is just always a good time for hearing about Vishnu. Whenever the moon's in Shravana, or when you get a change of month from one month to another, it's also typically not a day that you do any conventional, like one of the three facets of life, dharma, artha, kama. You don't do things, start things, initiate things, or take significant action when the month is changing. Because that's, what is it called? It's the anta, It can be a ganda anta or a conventional anta. But those periods are periods when it's good to disengage from material things and do increase your spiritual practice. And then on any Sunday is also good. This tale should be told to those who have faith and interest in it, by those who are dedicated to the feet of the source of all that is sacred, Vishnu, and who recite it without desiring any payment. So hearing katha from professional tellers sometimes is effective, but rarely, because the person is not really speaking with any sincerity. So the people who are listening have to have a qualification, and the people who are telling have to have a qualification. The people who are telling just have to have the qualification that they don't have an ulterior motive to telling it. They're telling it for the sake of glorifying Vishnu and Dhruva and Narada and all the people in it, or for facilitating the transmission of knowledge. And then the people who are listening to it have to have faith in it. They have to have confidence that it's worthy to listen to, and they have to have interest in it. So this tale should be told to those who have faith and interest in it, by those who are dedicated to the feet of the source of all that is sacred, Vishnu, and who recite it without desiring any payment. Under these perfect conditions, this tale will completely satisfy your soul. The literate should enlighten the unenlightened by showing them the right and nectarian path, out of kindness and compassion. The divine himself will arrange for the remuneration. So it's not that they don't accept a donation or a gift or something, but it's arranged by the divine, not by their business negotiations and contracts. O great Kuru, Maitreya said to Vidura, I am now finished telling you the extremely famous, extremely pure tale of the deeds of Dhruva, who as a child gave up all his toys and left his home and his mother to take shelter of Vishnu. Good, so you completed another major tale we completed another major tale in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva. So in fourth division, we had this introductory section about these cool family trees. And then we had the tale of Shiva and Sati, which is so incredibly epic. And then this one, the tale of Dhruva. I'm pretty sure the next tale is Prithu. Let's see what you guys have in your chat. Anil wanted to know if the circle of yugas has to do with something. I'm not sure what that question was. Even at the time that I read it, I wasn't sure what the question was about. So if you still have that question, you try to rephrase it. Melissa says, is death who came to lead him the way we think of death? Is it like immortality? No, it's death. So he left behind his karmas and he left behind his I don't know. I hate referring to the movie The Matrix. It's so corny, but if you're gonna get out of the Matrix, you pull the thing out of the back of your head, right? So you can't when you go. How does that work? I don't know if the Matrix analogy works, but he goes to Vaikuntha, so his existence is transferring. His existence is transferring out of the external realm and into the intrinsic internal realm. So he's finishing his body, mind, and ego are finishing completely. So that's death. Most people, they finish it partially. They just finish the connection to the body, for example. And then they go down to see Yamaraj and they get arrangements for a new one. But Dhruva, but the agent of death is uh, yeah, that's what I mean by like pulling that cord out. The agent of death is the one who disconnects you from the things that you're plugged into to operate in the world. So in order for Dhruva to actually transfer his existence, he's got to disconnect from this one. And that's why the death was the doorway between him and the craft. Does that make sense? It's death. It's the same death that everybody experiences, but death doesn't give every customer the same product because not every customer is coming in the door with the same amount of money. Yeah, most people get something very simple from death, which is you disconnect your mind from the body and you get sent to Yamaraj. But yogis and spiritualists, they also go through this gateway called death, but they get a different product from them. They get disconnected from the body and the mind and hopefully also the ego, and they get sent to Vaikuntha, or they may just get some other, there's various products that are on the shelves in the store called death. You can just get disconnected from the body, and then the mind and the ego can be sent into a high place to continue the practices. There's all sorts of possibilities. Let's see what else. Yes, Samurai Mama. It is actually no, yeah, actually Suruchi sarcastically told him not what to achieve. Suruchi was on a very basic level. She told him, try to get born in my womb. There's nothing really too spiritual about that. But Suniti extracted the truth from it, which is the fact that she said, you need to worship Bhagavan to be able to be born from my womb so that you can sit with Uttama. So Suniti took the truth from that false, foolish statement and said, you do need to worship Bhagavan to be able to sit at Uttama, which means go to the highest thing, achieve the highest goal. And then, so it was her who actually gave, it was actually Suniti who gave him. You could say that the seed of it was in Suruchi, in their treatment, but they're not really the guru, but they're like the impetus. Barta says, what's the literal meaning of the word guru? It literally means that it's got weight, that it's big or heavy. That's what the word guru means. So in other words, it implies something that's very significant. Like it's contrast to the word lagu. When you do poetry, there's guru syllables and lagu syllables. Ah is guru, is lagu. This is light and heavy. So why is a guru called a guru? Is he fat or something? Is heavy? He's significant. Is weighty. So there's a person that they have gravity. These kind of concepts in English, same basic concept. Gravity, significant, weight, weighty, heavy, deep. That's what guru means. So it doesn't mean literally anything like master or teacher or anything like that. It just means a significant, deep person or thing is called guru. Is Maitreya also an astrologer, Johnny Barker? Most Brahmanas know every subject. So somebody like Maitreya, who's a sage, he'll know every subject. He'll know medicine, he'll know cooking, he'll know art, he'll know dancing, he'll know everything. Astrology, but they'll have one specialty. So Maitreya is not a specializer in astrology, but he certainly knows more astrology than anybody like me knows. What else do we have here? How do you define faith for non-Hindu people? Simple faith, we talk about this a lot. Simple faith is in Sanskrit called Shraddha. It means where your heart goes. So faith doesn't mean the thing you believe in. It means the thing you trust. It is the thing you believe in. It's the thing that you expect will fulfill what your heart desires. That's what faith is. So in order to hear something correctly, you have to have Shraddha in it as the primary prerequisite. You have to have faith in something you're listening to, whether it's a scripture or whether it's a movie or whether it's just your friend talking to you. You won't pay attention to anything if you don't have Shraddha that there's something worth paying attention to. So the prerequisite to hear things, anything, including Vedic stories and tales and philosophy, is that you have Shraddha, that you have you have a feeling like this is worth my attention. Let me pay attention to this. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Heitel. Bardo asked, did people have different types of calendar to keep track of these dates, the nakshatra months days? What's the most accurate way to follow it? Now, actually, it's very simple. It's very simple. People still keep these calendars, although there's at this time, I mean, there's different parts, different towns or different sections in India do in slightly different ways. But this is basically the traditional Indian calendar to this day. And any software like will give you this calendar. It's just called a panchanga. Or it's a typical calendar. It'll always tell you this is the nakshatra for the day, this is the tithi for the day, this is the month. And when it says the moon, this is the nakshatra, that means this is the moon's nakshatra, the moon's phase. It's very easy to get that information. There's even an app, I don't know if you can Google GCal, GCAL, and it's a little tiny app that its sole purpose is just generating these calendars. Oh, I see Anil's question. Dhruva was the first to achieve Vishnu's abode, but how does this work in terms of time? Yeah, I don't know what they actually mean. No one's attained this. It's specific to his family. His specific first wish as a child was I want something better. My mom said I should achieve the highest thing. So that means I should achieve something better than what my brother has, better than what my father has, better than what my grandfather has, and even better than what my great grandfather has. So his father was Uttanapad, the king of the earth. His grandfather was Swayambhuva Manu, the demigod human. And his great grandfather was Brahma, the king of the universe. So he had to get something beyond the universe. And I think in that sense, nobody has achieved this place. It means none of these gods have achieved it. And probably that in terms of time, that means counting from the beginning, since the beginning of Brahma. What is the best nakshatra for the moon to be in when a wizard creates a spell? Jyeshta nakshatra. Depending on the wizard, of course. I mean, depending on the intention of the spell and the wizard. But if I'm just imagining like a kind of nefarious wizard, then it's Jyeshta for sure. Vincent, interesting. So Suniti is as morality extracted truth from all the things that's happening. Yes, very good. I was thinking that too. Bardo, so should it always be heart over mind? No. Your heart is, if our hearts are ignorant, so the mind actually needs to. What's mind mean actually? Mind is basically heart. Intellect. By that you mean, by mind you mean intellect. You have to use the intellect. You have to use the two of them together. You have to use the intellect to make the mind or heart have the right orientation or goals. Like if you love things which are stupid to love, then it's not very good. So the intellect has to help the mind, but the mind or the heart is the ultimate achievement. The ultimate experience isn't an intellectual thing; it's an emotional thing. Since nobody has achieved that place, that means he's the only person there. No, nobody has achieved it from the material universe. Doesn't mean nobody's there. Otherwise, where does Sunanda and Nanda come from? It's full of beings. Vaikuntha is full of more beings than are here. 3 times more. But Dhruva is the first one who achieves it permanently. The Kumars went there temporarily, the 4 Kumars, but Dhruva is the first one who achieves it permanently. Achieve doesn't mean people are always situated there, they don't achieve it. Good question, though, Kitty. I think you're trying to envision it, and that's good. That's how you have questions like that. Mama says because he was a Kshatriya, he had great ambition and discipline to achieve the highest place. Yes. Kat Davy. Is there a higher evolution of Jyeshta Nakshatra? As my ascendant, I don't feel deceptive, but seem to be perceived that way. Jyeshta gets a lot of shade, and I'm trying to find the light. Yeah, you can be the best, and magic. You can do magic. You can be the best. Will we hear more about Vaikuntha? Sudeep asks. Sure, you heard a lot, significant amount already, but you will certainly hear more about Vaikuntha. And actually, especially the main focus of the Bhagavatam is going to be on Krishna. And when an avatar is a Leela avatar, an avatar is displaying what they themselves are like, not just coming to do some kind of thing like reestablish the earth after it disintegrates. The avatar is coming to show themselves. They come with their whole atmosphere, their whole ecosystem comes with them. So the half of the Bhagavatam really is going to be talking about what Vaikuntha is, because you can't describe Vishnu without describing his ecosystem, the whole surrounding sphere around him. Prashant, our rishis declare that nakshatra of moon is the final deciding factor for assessing anyone's behavior. Thank you, Prashant. I'm not sure where they declared that, though. Achievement, as in being the best of himself. Now, achievement means something you don't have, but you get. So Dhruva is the first one to achieve Vaikuntha. That doesn't mean nobody else is there. They did not have it and then get it. Very nice. All right, guys. Good. So that's the end of the week and the end of this big section. Hare Krishna. Now, I hope you guys all have a great weekend thinking about Dhruva. What I like best about the story is how he's real. It's not a Disney story. Oh, he was a good guy who never made a mistake. Dhruva's story is so interesting, probably because he's not a Brahmana. His whole initial motive is very just ambition, power, and then he makes this big mistake. He loses control and gets completely angry and starts killing people, killing gods. So it's really interesting to me. This is the thing about the Dhruva story, is to show how you have imperfections, but you work them out. And it's not really, the goal is not to not have imperfections. The goal is how you work out your imperfections and what you do about them and how you improve from them. That's really what Dhruva shows. For me, that's what I appreciate from the Dhruva story. Yes. Also, greedy, Rick, I thought that was one of the most practical things I've ever heard and consistently ignored. And keep ignoring, but keep reminding myself that I shouldn't ignore this. One of the most practical things that I've ever heard in the whole Bhagavatam is Swayambhuva's statement to Dhruva that, you'll never be upset. He says, definitely fate always puts you in three kinds of situations. It's going to put you in a situation that's better than what you deserve, equal to what you deserve, or less than what you deserve. And you're going to wind up with people that are better than you, same as you, or inferior to you. The inferior people are going to treat you like crap. That's why they're called inferior. The superior people are going to be very gentle to you, and the peers are going to compete with you. But Manu said, don't compete with the guys who are the same as you. Don't envy the guys who are better than you. And the most important thing is, the thing that's the most practical is, don't get upset with the guys that are lower than you and therefore behaving so bad at you. Have sympathy for them. That concept is so interesting. Sympathy for them. Sympathy means I feel the same way you do. Sim means together. Pathy means feeling. I feel like I understand where you're at and where you're coming from, because I'm there too sometimes. I do crappy things to people and I feel crappy, like you are acting. I can sympathize with that. I'm not you when you realize that you yourself make the same mistakes that you hate when people do them to you. When you realize that, you stop hating the people and you actually start improving yourself. That to me is the most practical, for me personally, that's the most practical advice so far. But it's also one of those things that it's so real that it's so difficult to embrace and put into practice. Okay, thank you, Alf, for the donation. Yeah, so far Shiva is really the standout. All right, guys. Yeah, Mary. Thanks, everybody.